Okay, I think I am plugged in and I think I'm live. Oh, hi Zena, hi Jane, hi Linda. Hi, how are you guys? Welcome. Whew. Let's stay hydrated. Hi Tina. Hi everyone, how are you? It's so warm already. So warm. Not ideal, but hey, it's what it is. How is everyone feeling today? Hope you guys are having a great weekend so far. I'm tired, but it's okay. We're going good. Just rehydrating. We have 6 minutes to go. I just wanted to join in early to make sure that everything was working. I got paranoid that because I hadn't been on heygo for like a week and a bit, maybe I had forgotten how to use stuff. So I'm here a bit early, but we are not starting until the clock goes green, so don't worry. Still got a while. Oh, you know what? I think I'm gonna go open the windows. I'll be right back because we need a bit of breathing here. Hi, Regina. I'm just gonna go open my window, so I'll be right back. Okay, and I'm back. Excellent. Let's get some airflow in here. Hi, Laura. Welcome. How are you? We got 5 minutes to go. I'm just here early, making sure everything worked. So no worries. We're not joining properly until 5 minutes from now. Hi, Claire. How are you doing? How is your weekend? How's everyone else's weekend? Good, I hope. Whew. Hopefully less warm than I am. Although I actually know that where Claire is, things have been really, really warm as well. So I suspect, unfortunately, it's not cooler weather for everyone. All right. Hi, Jenny. How are you, Jenny? Hello. Yeah, I know. And I hear that actually this coming week is gonna be warmer where you are than actually down here. It's, oof, I don't know how we're gonna deal with that. For those of you who may not be from the UK, although I suspect you may be going through something very similar, we're having very, very extreme weather in the UK, and we are actually gonna be like in the 40 degrees or something like that next week, which is like the highest temperature that the UK has reached in God knows how long. So it's quite concerning because we're not used to this kind of weather in here. And even if we were used to, if I've lived in Toledo, in the center of Spain, where you just get 40 degrees 24/7, including at midnight, it's not a nice way of living. Like it's actually very restricting. When you see children playing with their friends at 11 p.m. rather than at 5 p.m., then you probably should be concerned. Yeah, that's it. I think that's the other problem. Like the block of flats where I live, it keeps the warmth in really, really well, which is great in the winter. But of course, for this kind of temperature, I'm like, please, no, go away, go away. Oh, it's awful. It's awful. Like my thermostat inside is marking right now 26 degrees inside the house, which probably means outside is just, well, however much. I haven't even checked. I don't want to check. Too much. Too much no matter what. But yeah, so we have 2 minutes and a half to go. I'm just, because of that, I just keep on drinking. Well, I'm doctor's orders. I need to be more hydrated than usual. So don't mind me. Hope you're all keeping hydrated. It's something that I struggle with sometimes, so I always remember people stay hydrated. It's basic, right? You drink and you just feel better, but well. Hi Nandi, how are you? Welcome. How am I feel? Well, I'm actually okay. I've been able to do some walking and stuff, which is good. I was outside, like in the outside world, 3 hours yesterday, but I'm still struggling a lot at night. So it's kind of weird. Like I'm okay during the day, but not so well in the evening. Hi Sandra, welcome. How are you? But I'll be talking about this a bit more in just a moment because it actually ties in with the fibromyalgia. Hi Samantha, hello, hello. So more details on that in a few because it's actually been quite shocking for me to make these realizations. Hi Claire, welcome. How are you guys doing? How is everyone? How is everyone's weekend so far? Hope you're having a good weekend despite of the weather. Hi Tanya, how are you? Yeah, and we have 1 minute to go. Yeah, 1 minute to go. I'm struggling sometimes to get my numbers right. My brain is still a bit fuzzy, so I think it says 1 minute, so it's fine. But yeah, and then we will get started. Keeping indoors. Yeah, no, we were talking about that. For those of you who are not from the UK and you may not know what's going on here, we just have this huge heat wave. Although I suspect many other countries are going through the same. And the UK is supposed to be reaching 40 degrees in some areas tomorrow and Tuesday, which is not good. We're not used to this type of heat or just weather conditions in general. I mean, it's glorious, beautiful blue skies outside. Don't get me wrong, that's amazing. But I know it's probably the unpopular opinion, but I would much rather have 22 degrees and a little bit of rain. But that's just me. So there we go. And I think we're about to go. So, yep, I might. Oh, bless you, Sandra. Hi, KG. Welcome. And I am literally just in the green now, so I guess I'll better get started. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Dr. Lilian Cespedes Gonzalez. I'm a tour guide here in heygo and a historian, but today I'm here to talk about chronic illness because I have fibromyalgia. And I started this talk in May for Awareness Day, but given certain developments in heygo recently and the fact that, well, I also had my operation coming up, I thought it would be good to just keep this going just to help make people just aware 24/7 and also to bring people together. Tanya, I'm really struggling at night too. My pain is horrible at the moment. See, this is one of the reasons why I wanted to keep this going. Hi, Coral from Sussex. How are you? Because when I actually did the first talks for Fibromyalgia Awareness Day, I actually realized how many more people had, if not fibromyalgia, something really similar and relatable here in heygo. And a lot of those people, like me, weren't aware that a lot of other people in the platform were also going through the same struggle. And I actually saw a lot of people become friends because they met each other in the chat and then they knew they had someone else that could relate to what was going on. So I thought that was something worth cultivating. But also we had several people joining that just wanted to learn more to how to support people with chronic illness and whatnot. So that's the reason why I'm repeating this. Now it's not gonna be exactly like what I did on my first 2 tours of this, because of the operation. So yes, Sandra, I've had my operation and I wanted to sort of talk about that and how it's impacted me with a chronic illness because it's been quite an interesting process for me. Now, first things first, I will just explain some basic details about fibromyalgia for those of you who may not know a lot about the subject. Hi Karen, hi Tina, welcome. We're literally just getting started. Hope you're all doing good. So just basic details about fibromyalgia for those of you who may not know or may not have a lot of insight into this illness. So it's a chronic illness, which means it has no cure and it stays with you for life. It is not degenerative and it's not terminal. So it means you wouldn't normally die from it, and it means it doesn't generally get worse over time. But the problem is, because of the nature of the illness, of course, the older you get, the more impact it has in your life. Now, fibromyalgia is technically understood as a neurological condition, which means there is something in the chemistry of our brain that doesn't quite work okay. We think it's actually the neuronal receptors that just don't communicate properly and cause our body to just misunderstand things and end up in pain or fatigue and not being able to regulate in general, as well as other people without that problem would. There are some studies that suggest it may be autoimmune, but then again, neurological conditions and autoimmune problems are quite common and frequently go together. So we shall see what comes of those studies in the near future. Now, in the UK alone, fibromyalgia affects 1 in 20 people, which is a lot of people if you think about that. And it is stipulated that, like in the US alone, 4 million people have chronic illnesses similar to fibromyalgia, and fibromyalgia is one of the, sort of one with highest numbers. So it is a condition that actually affects a lot of people, but is not very well understood. Hi Dave, welcome, how are you? And that's kind of one of the reasons why I want to talk more about it, so that people can understand. Now, it affects people in a different way. It is something quite interesting, and a lot of doctors and medical practitioners are starting to think that fibromyalgia may be, in this particular sense, similar to something like autism or Asperger's or ADHD that are on a spectrum. So that means even though some of us may have fibromyalgia, it may not affect me in the same way than you, and that will depend on your specific circumstances and the world around you. Hi Michelle, how are you? Welcome. So that kind of makes it even harder to understand, because we may not be going through the same thing, even though we may have the same problem. So it's difficult to manage. And it is also an invisible illness. Now, what we mean with this is that you probably would look at me and be like, oh, you don't look sick, you don't look ill. But when you didn't see me 2 hours ago with muscular spasms going all over through my body and unable to leave my bed, you may have thought otherwise. So that's the issue. The illness is always there, but the symptoms can come and go. Some people, if they have fibromyalgia really, really bad, may be symptomatic literally 24/7. Some people not. Some people may have peaks of time where the symptoms are worse and where the symptoms go down. Normally, where we have a period where the symptoms go up, we call this a flare. And it's triggered by several different things. Again, it depends on the person, but there are certain things that normally are the same for everyone. Normally because you don't sleep properly, because you don't rest enough, or because you overexert yourself in a particular way. And it's all because, like I said, it's understood that our neural receptors here just don't process information properly. Now, what a lot of people don't realize is that pain and fatigue are actually information in our body. That's how our body essentially tell us that we need to stop, right? It's like pressing the red button because the car is going too fast or whatever. Is the same thing. What happens in your body when you have pain is that your brain is trying to tell you what you're doing is dangerous and you need to stop. That's what pain is. It's actually just a coded message that a part of your body receives and reacts to protect you. And it's the same with fatigue. If your body realizes that you're doing too much, or that what you're doing is beyond what you should be doing, it sends that message of, can't do this anymore, stop. So you stop for self-preservation. Now, of course, when your brain doesn't really understand those signals properly, you may feel more pain or more fatigue for things that someone else may not. And I always use this example. I don't have a pen on me, but I have pretty sharp nails. If I do this, you may think this shouldn't hurt, but actually my hands are quite sensitive. My hands is normally where the fibromyalgia affects me most. And for me, doing this actually feels quite painful. So it's as simple as that. It's an enhanced reaction from the body that we simply can't control. So it's really difficult for us to explain what we go through and how it affects us, because a lot of what happens to us is not on the surface, it's inside. And that's what really makes this illness a challenge. A lot of people think it's in our head, or because the symptoms are kind of quite erratic. You don't have like physical proof, like when you break your arm, that you are sick. So it becomes hard for people to empathize with it. And a lot of people think we're just making it up, but I can guarantee you we definitely aren't. It's very, very real. And we just need a little bit more empathy in our lives. Now, what I wanted to speak about you guys today, for example, is the way something like fibromyalgia can impact something like surgery recovery. So for those of you who may not know, I know many of you here know, I actually had a surgery last Saturday, so not yesterday, as in Saturday last week. which is related to fibromyalgia. I've been dealing with several, health problems for quite some time. The doctor had always ascribed it to fibromyalgia, but it turns out that they were wrong. So luckily, my new doctor thought that something wasn't right, and they sent me for analysis. Hi Shalva, welcome, how are you? And this is something very common. Now, because fibromyalgia is such a misunderstood illness, and it has like different areas of your body and your life that it can affect, if you have a wide spectrum chronic illness like that, it's very easy for medical practitioners to dismiss anything else that may be happening in your body and say, oh, it's just your chronic illness, deal with it. Well, I had been dealing with abdominal pain literally for my whole life, to the point that I knew it wasn't normal. And I think it was last year I actually started having intermittent bleeding between my periods and hormonal changes that I knew were not real. You know your body best. Like, that's the best thing I can say. And I always tell people, you know your body best. You know when something is not right. And I knew something wasn't right. You have actually, Tanya. Thank you, Tanya. Hi, Bonnie. Bonnie is great, by the way, guys. If you don't know Bonnie, Bonnie has done similar tours to what I'm doing right now. So if you guys have any chronic illnesses, Bonnie and Ian, the tour guide we have up north in the Cotswolds, also has done similar tours to this with different illnesses. So, we do have actually a very supportive community in here. But yeah, because of these problems I was having, the doctors had just been like, oh, it's the fibromyalgia, never mind. Until I actually ended up in A&E twice in the same month because I had bled through my clothes, which was not normal. So they did some scans on me, and they actually thought they had found a polyp. And that's why they sent me to surgery to remove the polyp. Well, unfortunately, when I went to surgery last Saturday at 10:15, turns out that there was no polyp, but I actually had endometriosis. Now, for those of you who may not know, endometriosis is another illness. It actually has a really high percentage of comorbidity with fibromyalgia. So that means that, unfortunately, because fibromyalgia already creates so many dysfunctions within your body, you're more likely to develop other medical problems. And this is not something just that happens to people with fibromyalgia. It's a particular problem of chronic illness. I always laugh at this kind of to try and bring some joy into it. I say it's like Pokemon, you gotta catch them all. Because, when you have a chronic illness of any nature, your body's already not functioning properly. Your antibodies are always, going all over the place. Your brain is not working properly. Your heart is not working properly. Your lungs, whatever it is that is not quite okay with you, it's causing a deficit that is essentially creating an open wound, imaginary as it may be, for other things to go wrong. Well, fibromyalgia, because of the wide spectrum of symptoms that it has that particular predisposition to allow a person to develop other problems. And endometriosis is a very common one, because we actually think one of the reasons for both fibromyalgia and endometriosis may be also related to hormonal imbalances, which then causes our neurological problem. It's all of this, I say supposed, because they are still doing many studies on this, so it's not, crystal clear science, but the most recent studies of the last decade suggest that this is actually the case, just simply because there is far too many people, connecting those dots and realizing that there is a pattern, but the pattern is not clear just yet. Now, the problem with endometriosis is that, when you have any problem in your body, your cells are constantly regenerating to create new tissue, right? We create new skin. That's the reason why we shed skin. We create new hair. That's the reason why we have hair loss, which is normal, unless you have obviously a hair condition. And it's the same with all of our internal organs. They regenerate. Well, unfortunately, in the case of endometriosis, that regeneration sometimes makes the tissue grow in places where it shouldn't. So in my case, the surgeon actually found endometriosis, so growth of tissue where it shouldn't be, in the back of my womb and on the ligament in my pelvis, which explained why I had been having all of those problems in my lower abdomen for such a long time. Now, I actually didn't have a single problem with the pain from the surgery. Like, I had never had surgery in my life, guys. I was terrified because I didn't know what was going to happen. I'm 31 and I had never had, anything inside me done in that way. So I was quite nervous. But I actually remember very clearly waking up from the anesthesia and not actually feeling pain in my abdomen area. Now, because I have fibromyalgia, pain is actually one of the main common symptoms that everyone with fibro has. Generalized pain is one of them. Chronic fatigue is another one. And the third one that most of us normally have is something called brain fog, which is kind of like, imagine that you are thinking, but all of the words in your brain are sort of like all jumbled up and scrambled, and your, brain capabilities and cognition are just not quite wired properly. And that can affect you on different levels. Hi, Evie, how are you? So because of the pain, I thought, oh, never mind. Maybe it's just because I'm drugged up and I'm not noticing anything. But actually, consistently, the pain on my abdomen, where I have the 4 cuts for the procedure that they did, hasn't hurt at all. The problem really has been when I actually woke up and they moved me to a different bed. Now, the nurses hadn't actually read my file. They didn't know I had fibromyalgia, and they were quite violent with the movements. So I had muscular spasms coming up all the way through my body. So I was actually crying, and I mean genuinely crying in tears, not because of anything they had done to me, but already because of this thing that I have. Hi, Polly, how are you? So that's just to give you a little insight of how this illness works, I had just been stabbed in the abdomen 4 times with a knife and sewed up. And I was like, yeah, okay, that's a little bit sore. However, my own body decided to go crazy on me and be like, oh no, girl, you're not gonna have a good time. And send these spasms, which essentially are like twitches in your muscles or your tendons, that because they are twitching, are constantly putting the muscle in tension, so you just can't control the movement, and they actually make it hurt all over my spine. So I couldn't be comfortable in the hospital bed. It was honestly a nightmare. And the nurses were like, what's wrong with her? And I was like, look, I have this thing trapped here, and until that's removed, I'm not gonna be okay. And I just remember the face of shock in the nurse when I was trying to sort of remove the knot. So one of the few things you can do with muscular spasms is just finding the place where the muscle has got triggered and release it. It's kind of like when you have a massage and they move the muscles to, bring circulation into it, or snap the knot that you may have and make it breathe again. Well, kind of that, but 3 times more hardcore, because it tends to be several groups of muscles all in one. In my particular case, it was right underneath my shoulder blade. You know where your shoulder blade does that L? Right there. So it was quite painful, and I had to use my knuckles to actually get in there. And the nurse was like, what are you doing? So I explained to her, and she was like, and you have to live with this 24/7? And I was like, yeah. And she was like, I've never had to deal with a chronic illness like this. I can't imagine, like, you're here with a post-op. I was expecting you to be in pain or sick or whatever because of that, not because of something else. And I was like, well, there you go. And that's a medical practitioner, guys. Even medical practitioners struggle to understand how this illness works, let alone ordinary people like me who have to deal with this. By the way, hello everyone that just joined. Hi Hillary, hi Adrian, hi Diane. And yes, see, this is what Bonnie is saying. An invisible condition is just so hard to explain. So if you've not seen it before with your very own eyes and have that hard sort of evidence to understand what's happening, how it works, etc., it's just hard to envision. You can't actually recreate it because it's not going to be true to reality. The corner of wall works, yeah. That sounds really hardcore, but it is true. I've done that before, because you sort of need something that will sort of help you wedge that movement. And everyone, like particularly friends and whatnot, sort of go like, wow, but that must be so painful. It is painful, but you kind of get used to compromising short-term pain for long-term relief. And I know that probably sounds really horrible, but when it's something that you have to deal with 24/7, you kind of accept this philosophy that having 24 hours of more or less tranquility is okay if you need to endure 15 minutes of excruciating agony, because you need to compromise essentially. Hola Adrian, how are you? I'm trying to explain to people that I'm so much more than just tired. Yeah, well, that's the other thing. So This is the pain, and this is one of the best examples I have. So the reason why I've been in bed with my post-op for over a week is not actually been because of the post-op. I mean, my lower abdomen area has been obviously, not working normally, so I've not been able to do certain movements. But my biggest problem was the fact that my own body was generating more pain because of the op, because it knew something wasn't right, and because of the fatigue. And I'm so glad that Claire has explained this, because chronic fatigue is not just how to explain. Imagine that you are not a runner and you go and run, a marathon for charity or something, and you come back and you're dead. Like, that's really nasty fatigue. The type of chronic fatigue that we're talking about is, imagine the worst flu that you've had in your life, when you feel like even just breathing is hard and effortless, it requires a lot of effort. That, and in fact, I say flu, but a lot of people with COVID, and I know some cases are on the rise, so you may be even experiencing some of this. I know a lot of people with COVID have actually suffering from long-term fatigue, or what they call now long COVID. That type of fatigue of, oh my God, I have the weight of the world on my shoulders. That's what people with fibromyalgia or other types of chronic illness normally have to deal with. It's not just something that you can just go have a nap and you're gonna feel better from. I mean, rest really helps, and it's very much encouraged, but it's a lot more complicated than that. So, I'm not suggesting that you being tired is not valid. That's not the case. All I'm saying is that, because we hear this a lot, just being tired doesn't really cut it for us. It's generally being, running on fumes. And I normally sort of explain it this way. Imagine that you have, your phone that you may be using to watch this, and you think that your batteries are at 100, right? That you're fully charged. But actually, the reality of events is that it's not. It's very deceiving, and we don't know that until we start doing something. So it's really hard to manage because of that, because we simply just don't know. That's the other problem. We don't know when we're going to have a flare, a bad day, or something like that. So it's very counterintuitive. You kind of have to be double guessing and micromanaging every minute of your day, which is not very nice, to be fair. Sorry guys, you've put a lot of things on the chat. I'm just catching up with them. Single condition forms are very, yeah, Bunny is right. There is actually a lot of information out there that's really helpful. Hi, Joanna. Sorry, I didn't catch you there. Welcome. What about a massage chair style? I mean, it helps me, Sandra, but the problem I have with those massage chairs is that they don't go deep enough. A lot of people think that just a normal sort of surface massage is good enough. And frankly, it does a lot to sort of remove some of the superficial pain. But a lot of the tension that I have in my muscles actually goes really, really deep, to the point that I actually mean like knuckles, or even having to use elbow. My osteopath normally has to use elbow in certain parts of my body to actually release that tension. So things like that type of chair with massage or those cushions and whatnot are good for day-to-day prevention. Now that's something I'm gonna get to in just a moment. I'm just gonna carry on seeing what you guys have put on the chat. Polly, my daughter 47 suffers, took 20 years, yeah, to get any kind of diagnosis and no appropriate treatments. Our hope is that long COVID. Yeah, this is so true. I have been having fibromyalgia since I was 17. That's when I started showing the first symptoms. But I didn't get a diagnosis until I was actually 25. So I've only had a diagnosis for about, 6-7 years of my life, even though I've had fibromyalgia for the vast majority of my adult life. It's very, very hard to diagnose because there is no test to figure out whether you have fibromyalgia or not. It's literally what we call, diagnosis by elimination process. So they do tests normally for you for other chronic illnesses or problems that they can actually, testify with actual science. And they kind of just keep on discarding things. So when they know it's not everything else, it's always like, okay, well, it's none of these other things you could have had that fit the symptoms, etc. So it's probably fibromyalgia. And it's never, it's like 100% sure, because doctors are very reluctant to say things like that. They say, it all indicates that you probably have, or it looks like, if you see what I mean. So although it's a diagnosis, you always have that fear that maybe it's because the science doesn't know enough. In a few years' time, you may actually find out you had something else, or the understanding of the illness would be different and things would change. So that's also something really hard, because when you know you're not okay, but you don't have a diagnosis, you can't really do much to make yourself feel okay. You cannot do much for doctors to take you seriously and for everyone else to respect you. So it's really hard. But this thing with long COVID is actually being proven that, anyone can get things like chronic fatigue out of the blue for whatever type of illness. So it's actually sort of highlighted how this could just become a side effect of a virus. What about the people who are already here, who have this type of illness and who have to cope with it day-to-day basis? So the long COVID diagnosis has actually helped doing some improvements for multiple sclerosis, chronic fatigue syndrome, and fibromyalgia in the last couple of years, because, well, as there was money for researching COVID, it's kind of been a nice side effect that we've had, but it's kind of been a side effect. No one really took us seriously until then, which is really sad. Claire, I have an autoimmune disease, and if I overdo things, exhausted for weeks, and sleep doesn't help. That's the other thing. When we go to sleep, people with chronic illness and fibromyalgia in particular, sleep is super important for us, which is the reason why I was hoping that if I slept long enough during my surgery recuperation, I would be fine. But of course, the problem that we have with fibromyalgia is that sleep at nighttime is actually the worst moment of the day for us a lot of the time, because you are tired already from the accumulation of the day, let alone your fatigue. You need sleep. You need that shutdown moment. And from a biological point of view, that shutdown moment is actually really important for us. You probably guys know this already, but just in case you don't, when we sleep, our brain and our body in general take time to regenerate those cells that make sure we are healthy. It takes time to readjust all of the chemicals in our brain that send those messages, etc., etc. Now, because we people with fibromyalgia don't get that rest, that imbalance is never properly fixed. If you get a really good night, like, honestly, it's like night and day. When we manage to get one of those really good nights, I don't know how else to explain it, but it's kind of like, imagine that you've been like, I don't know, locked in your house for a really long time and you've never seen the sunshine, and suddenly you're exposed to sun and you have that moment of, you know what I mean? That warmth, that beauty. And I have no other way of explaining it, because it genuinely feels like that. Suddenly you wake up and you've actually had proper sleep, rest and sleep at the same time. And it's like, wow, is this how being normal feels? Oh my God, I'm going to take over the world. Because it's such a rush of joy to have that release of fatigue, of pain, of everything, that it generally makes you feel like a completely different person. And it generally feels like being a completely different person. But that causes another problem, which is why the preventive stuff I was talking about is very important. I'm just going to catch up with chat very quickly. It's like being in cement. Yeah, literally. You're just like stiff and unable to move, and it's not pleasant. My old schoolmate Veronica has fibromyalgia. She can never book. Yeah, exactly. You just don't know. And a lot of people don't really understand how frustrating that is, because you feel like you cannot take part in things, or sometimes you just need to cancel some things, and that's really horrible for us too. Like, you don't necessarily want to let anyone down, but one day you may wake up and you may not be okay, and something you really wanted to do, it just doesn't happen anymore. And that then has not just a medical side effects, but social side effects that are really hard. Like, you become really isolated. People think you don't want to hang out with them, or that you're not worth their time because you may cancel on them last minute or something like that. It's really hard. It has many different side effects. Hi Lori, hi Ella. Sorry, hit wrong button. Research. Yes, that's fine, Polly. Don't worry. I understood what you meant. They squeeze the area around your joints to see what are. Yeah, I completely get that. I was diagnosed 2013, but they think, yeah, that's the thing. Some people have had it for a really long time, and just getting that diagnosis takes so long. Very similar with MS. I was tested for, Tina, it's the same thing. It's just ruling things out, and then there we go. Woke up at 10:13 this morning, still exhausted. Yeah, it's unfortunately that type of stuff that is just ridiculous. What's the best way to manage? Well, Jay, I'm glad you asked that question, because it all has to do with this prevention that I talk about, but unfortunately that is the hardest. the hardest thing to manage. Now, essentially, you have two options with fibromyalgia. You may be able to take some pain drugs that your doctor may be able to prescribe you, either to control your pain or to control your fatigue. Now, the problem is a lot of that medication is actually quite strong and normally induces a lot of other side effects. And the medication only works effectively on about 50% of patients. So it's a gamble. It's 50-50 whether it works for you or not. It's quite hard. I unfortunately cannot take any of those medications. I'm quite tiny. If you guys have seen me in real life or when I'm on tour, I'm just about 5 foot and quite petite. So I am quite overreactive to those medicines in general, so I can't take anything like that. So the only other option that I had was changing my life. So it's lifestyle choices. Because there are actually many things in our life that we don't realize or take for granted that affect our body and that we can change that help prevent flares. And that's honestly the best thing you can do, is sort of making sure that on a day-to-day basis you are doing the best by yourself to prolong the period of time that you go from one flare to another. Because the more stable that you are, the easier that flare will be to manage, and the less radical that flare will be to manage. Unfortunately, when we have these moments of, oh my God, I feel amazing, let's do everything that I cannot do on a normal day, we overexert ourselves because we are not aware that actually, although we may feel good, the illness is still there, the impact to our bodies and our brains is the exact same. So it doesn't matter that we feel okay. Tomorrow, we may actually pay for the consequences of it. So you essentially need to just control yourself and avoid yo-yoing. If you do too little or too much on days when you are like bad or good, you could potentially be perpetuating that back and forth that just makes a vicious cycle from which is very difficult to break through. But it is hard. So the best way to manage it is really just assessing, and I generally mean assessing every aspect of your life, which is hard, but like Bonnie says in here, it takes a while to work out, to optimize comfortable living. But honestly, it's really, really good, because once you at least develop those tools and those things, then you can use them for life. I mean, bodies change and we change, so it may be that it requires some tweaking. And you're always learning. The thing is, you really need to learn yourself a lot. And that takes time, and we all make mistakes. Like I literally treat myself like a lab rat, which I know sounds like a horrible thing to say, but I do. Sometimes I am like, I wonder if this will make me feel good or bad. And you just take a chance and test it and store the information and save it for the next time. So you need to do a lot of trial and error, which is unfortunate, but it's the only way to know what works for me. Because as much as several people here in chat, have a fibro and other similar conditions and whatnot, it is likely, because at the end of the day, all of our bodies are different, that although something may work really well for me, it may not work as well for them. So you cannot just say, oh, this works wonders, so never mind, it's gonna be okay for everyone. Everyone needs some fine tweaking. But in answer to your question, Jay, one of the best things I ever did, first of all, was keeping a food diary. And I mean literally, not for like calorie counting and that type of stuff, like I don't care. But to understand what your triggers are. Because actually, like we normally say, the gut is our second brain. And a lot of the bacteria and chemicals that we use to dissolve food have an impact in the way our brain absorbs it and our body absorbs it. And those minerals can help us balance those chemicals. So what you eat is super important. There are actually some food components and chemicals that we know trigger fibromyalgia, like boom, you have them and 99% of people with the illness will have a negative reaction. So obviously staying away from those things is very important. In the same way that we know there are certain chemicals that help. But again, understanding what works for your body is super important. So I kept a food diary for 2 years. And what I literally did was just writing breakfast and what I had, like, I don't know, cereals with sugar and milk. Lunch, omelette, fried omelette with cheese, that type of stuff. And after a while, you start seeing a pattern. And suddenly, maybe you look through the pages and you realize, oh, look, all of the days when I ate eggs, I felt a little wrong the following day. So then you remove that X and you're like, oh, since I stopped having that X, I feel much better. And that's normally because there is something, some kind of chemical on that X or on the way that X is produced or cooked or whatever. Like, honestly, there are so many different components that go into it that triggers the fibromyalgia. One of those things that we know triggers fibromyalgia quite badly is actually palm oil and peanuts. Now, the thing with peanuts is because, peanuts are quite a high allergen anyway. That's the reason why peanut allergies are really, really hardcore and scary. But because of that, peanuts have a tendency to just trigger not necessarily an allergic reaction, but something similar to an allergic reaction in a lot of people, even if you're not allergic to peanuts. And we people with fibromyalgia have that sensitivity enhanced. So, for example, I love peanut butter, which has both, in most cases, peanut and palm oil. Palm oil is hard for us because it's very, very difficult to digest. And a slow digestion actually means we don't absorb nutrients, which means our brain slows down and we cannot get that proper regeneration going. So I had to cut it out. Since I don't touch it, I'm fine in that perspective. But there is many other things. Fast food is normally quite bad for chronic illnesses of any kind because they slow you down and because a lot of the chemicals they release are not good for you. A lot of heavy meats like beef. I love beef, but again, it's quite difficult to digest. So there are certain things in there that we know help and some others. Stimulants and alcohol, definitely no, because they create an overreaction on your brain. You already have an overreactive brain. You don't want to exacerbate that. So those are like just some general things that we know because we've studied them from a long time, in terms of food and their impact in our health in general, that they are not good for us. But honestly, apart from that, it's just keeping a record of things that work. And for those of you interested, I from my personal experience, I can vouch that, for example, blueberries are very, very good for fibro fog. So when we have that cognitive dysfunction in our brain, because blueberries are packed with nutrients and antioxidants, and antioxidants actually help the wiring in your brain. So blueberries are super good if you have problems with that. Coconut milk and coconut water, because they have a lot of manganese and magnesium, and manganese and magnesium are two chemicals that help us fight fatigue. So, there are certain things like that you can pick up and they will gradually have a positive impact in your body. But other than controlling things like that, it's like doing the same, but with every single aspect of your life. So I changed my sleep routine. I tested, I joke not, 5 different mattresses in like 2 years just to find one that was comfortable for me, because sleep is so important. You need to make sure that it works. Different pillows, like honestly, I live, people have seen this before, I live surrounded by pillows and blankets. Because you need to make yourself comfortable. And if you are comfortable, that's also going to have a positive impact in your brain and you're going to feel much better about yourself. But yes, Jay, you literally just need to just analyze everything in your life and do small changes. It's honestly just hard. Claire, I only work 4 days instead of 5. Yeah, but let everyone else in the bakery. See, that's hard. The workplace is one of the places where it's hardest to actually make these changes, because people sometimes think that it's just favoritism or whatever, but it's not. It's actually adjusting to what works for you. And sometimes you need to reduce the amount of time you work just to not overexert it. Sometimes you need to change, responsibilities at work. That one is actually one of the hardest things to manage, because it's not down to you personally, it's down to other people. Claire, I'm a serious, yeah, learning rehearsal takes a lot of energy. I mean, playing instruments in general as well is a lot of pressure. You have to be surrounded by people, you are committing, you are delivering. It's hard. Yeah, caffeine, caffeine for dystonia for sure. That's true. SMG, so bad. That type of chemicals, like, write them out of your life. All of that type of overproduced food, etc., is just not good for you. I found K laser treatment is very helpful. What is K laser treatment, Karen? That I would be interested to know. We make palm-free muffins in our bakery. That's really good because, like I said, palm oil in general is really bad for the earth. The production of palm oil is really bad for the earth, but for us it's hard as well. Joanna, Did you try any CBD oil? I've tried magnesium oil. I found it really helped. I haven't tried CBD oil. I don't know how I feel about it, to be honest. But then again, I have already quite an overreactive brain with just other similar chemicals, so I am just reluctant to try it. I've heard some people that said that really, really helped, particularly people that I know that have rheumatoid arthritis. But I can't actually comment on that front. I don't know. I think unfortunately CBD oil is one of those things that, because it's also not been around for as long, I'm a bit reluctant to try it just yet. But it may be worth a go, depending, of course, what your main symptoms are. Hi, Leonor, how are you? Being surrounded by people is exhausting. This is another thing a lot of people don't realize. Like, communicating with people takes a lot of energy. I know it probably doesn't look that way, but think about it, guys. When you are talking to someone, you are listening, talking, looking, hopefully, because you need to pick up, nonverbal cues. If you are in an open space, there may be other noises that you need to filter through to keep that communication going. And all of that means your brain is constantly chipping away to talk. That's just talking. Any social situation where you have more than one person around you means more stimuli. Controlling all of those stimulations can be hard. And on top of that, I think particularly people with fibromyalgia and other chronic illnesses, we've become quite aware of people judging us and people being sometimes mean to us, depending on what aspect of our personality we show. Usually, when you have a chronic illness like this, not everyone is as accepting as other people. So you just get a little bit of a social anxiety that people are just going to be nasty to you. So you just have that general extra tension added to the situation. Managing large crowds is hard as well because you need to look for your safety, their safety, etc. So it's honestly just exhausting. And it's something that we don't realize. And I think people who maybe are introverted understand that better, because being around with people just requires so much energy for them to, interact. And so they get that just talking and being with people can be quite hard. But otherwise, it may seem a little bit, counteractive in that sense, which is a shame. Just catching up with the chat, guys. Yes, being surrounded. I thought that was just me being an introvert. Well, you may have it double in that sense, Claire. But it just creates so much stuff around you. It just becomes hard to control. And because the best way to sort of self-preserve our illness is to control as many aspects of our life directly, it also gives you that anxiety of, oh my God, if something happens to me right now, I have literally no control over this, because there is however many other people around me. So it just kind of adds layers. This is what I always say. A chronic illness is not just the individual and its medical condition. It's all of the circumstances in their life. And the circumstances around us actually make a big, big difference. And having supportive networks and friendly people that, you can call upon, or that understand what you're going through without actually imposing that judgment on you, is super important. Joanna, CBD oil before going to sleep in a very good... Okay, that's cool. Polly, Emma has taken part in gut flora. Yeah, gut flora is important too because of all of the nutrients. It's a type of F-cold laser that uses... Oh, helps. That's interesting. I don't think we have that here in the UK, but I'll keep an eye out for that. I'm the opposite. If I'm alone, my dystonia is far worse. Well, that's fair enough. Yes. Yeah, ADHD has that problem with overstimulation or lack of stimulation, and therefore needing to balance them out. That's a hard combo. That's a really hard combo. I can drive around Southampton much anymore. Oh, I know, Tanya, I know it's really hard. Buddhist proverb says, meaningless talk is weakening your mind. That is some gold right there, Joanna. Hi, Joe, how are you? Welcome. So yeah, sleep, food in general, everything like that. And one that I always say, I know it's really hard, and I know it's really, really hard because I've gone through this, but I can't emphasize and I genuinely mean it, how important it is to stay active. Now, I know when we have a chronic illness like this, because of the fatigue and the pain, it's really hard to just move in general. But there is something quite magical that happens in our brains when we move, even if it's just small movements. When we're doing certain movements with our body, our brain chemistry changes. And of course, if we have problems with our joints, because with the fatigue and the pain, our joints can become quite fragile and painful, the less that we move them, although they may feel rested, the weaker they get, the more prolonged the pain can become. So I always say this: if you can, please try to mobilize yourself, even if it's just a little, even if it's just gentle stretches. It's gonna be better for you in the long term. I know it's particularly hard if you haven't done any type of movement, stretches, exercises. I'm not talking go for a run, by the way. I'm just saying, even if it's just standing up and doing a few laps around the house is better, or just literally moving every single muscle of your body individually while you're sitting down, because that also increases your blood flow and better articulation. Movement is also related with blood flow and circulation in general. So movement is really important, and I think that's probably the biggest challenge, because moving when you're in pain and you're fatigued is like, no, you don't want to do it. But unfortunately, it is really important. So that's another one that I would recommend. But if you're having problems with that, I would suggest you speak with your doctor first, and you go to some physiotherapy or something like that first, just so they can get you back to speed slowly, so then you can start taking your own actions, because otherwise you could hurt yourself really badly, and we don't want that, obviously. Oh, thank you so much, Jay. You're so kind. Polly researched through the Cornell University, and they're working on, prebiotics and probiotics are really good. That's the reason why now I don't drink any milk whatsoever. I just have kefir, which is a yogurt with a lot of protein and prebiotics in general. So it's good for the gut, and it helps absorption of other minerals. I think what appeared to be introverted behavior from now diagnosed as autism. Yeah, that's actually another one, and that's the reason why I think a lot of medical practitioners are now sort of trying to think about, well, autism and ADHD are considered also neurological conditions. So could it be that there is some connection between neuropathy, which is technically what people with fibromyalgia are considered to have, than people with autism? And actually, that's another thing I haven't really talked about, because it's not one of the main symptoms, but because of the brain fog and the fatigue and the pain, something that a lot of people with fibromyalgia can deal with is becoming overwhelmed. And I don't mean necessarily depression or anxiety. I actually mean being really overwhelmed. It's a little bit like, it may feel similar, but it's actually different. You're not becoming anxious in the sense of the same way that people with anxiety feel, although it has a similar component in your brain. What happens to us is, because our stimulants and pain and neural receptors are not geared properly. For example, what to me may feel like a soft apple, imagine that it may be a bit rough. I may touch it and it may feel harsh, and that harshness may become so sticky in the sense of how I feel that it may really turn me, it may really just not agree with me in any way, shape, or form. And that's just textures. With clothes, it happens a lot. Like, there are certain things I cannot wear because my skin is so sensitive because of the fibromyalgia. If I wear them, I will just become so incredibly overwhelmed from a tactile point of view. I just can't function. There are certain perfumes that really sort of attack my nose, and I become dizzy, I become nauseous. That's the type of overwhelmingness I referring to. It's the same with light, with sounds, all sorts of things. I have a particular problem with sound overwhelmingness, and it's quite similar to when people with autism have a sensory overload. We react in a very similar way. We suddenly feel like we don't want to be in that space, or whatever it is, and we genuinely need to get out to try and fix it, to try and calm down. So, I mean, this is honestly, I'm just scratching the surface here. There's so much stuff. But it's a very complicated illness. I mean, chronic illness in general is very complicated. But that's unfortunately the struggle. I'm sorry, the chat just froze for a moment. Let me just catch up. Oh, guys, you're being so kind. Thank you so much. Yes, movement is definitely a good medicine. Chair yoga and Tai Chi. Yes, chair yoga I haven't tried, but Tai Chi was really, really good for me as well, Polly, because the stretches are gentle. In Tai Chi, you cannot really hurt yourself unless you do it really, really wrong. And if you have an instructor there with you, you shouldn't be doing it wrong. So yes, I can definitely vouch for that. Thank you so much for the tips, guys. You're very, very generous, and I'm really grateful for your time. And I actually think I've actually gone over my time, so I should probably start wrapping it up. But like I said, I'm gonna be doing this at least once a month, not just to help people come together, but to help raise awareness, to help create a safe space, because I know there has been quite a lot of problems going on, and I keep on hearing a lot of anxiety around this area. I really, really want to make sure that everyone is as happy and as comfortable in their own skin as we can. So I will keep on talking about this to help those of you who may not know anything about this type of chronic illnesses. I will keep talking about this just to help exchanging, this worked for me, maybe it may work for you, and it may help you, I don't know. And also just to generally keep a nice community going. It was generally so touching when I found out so many other people going through this and then them becoming friends on their own, which was like, really emotional. And like I said, to me, it's so inspiring that then Bonnie also talks about her things and Ian also talks about his things. I think it's important, when we can develop that degree of empathy where everyone knows where we're coming from, then everyone is more accepting, and that's really, really important for me, at least. So there we go. That's all for today. Thank you so much for your comments, guys. I'm so glad that this has been helpful in any way, shape, or form. Oh my God, it's like completely understood, but then didn't understand. I would relate with my OCD. Nandi, my auntie, has quite severe OCD that was understood or treated as bipolar disorder for many years. So I know that it's a particularly horrible struggle. So you're not alone. So thanks so much for being here and for sharing. And actually, that's something I always say. Thank you so much, guys, for sharing, because I can talk, and that's fine. I've always been very open about my stuff, but I know it's not easy to just come and say, hey, I have this problem and this is how it affects me. I know it takes a lot of courage because the way we've been treated in the past. So if nothing else, I hope you leave today knowing that you're actually a lot braver and powerful than you thought, and that you're very much loved. Because honestly, I love having you here. I am actually tearing up a little bit, and I always get very emotional when I talk about these things. Oh my God. I'm gonna try and keep my cool because the abdomen is still hurting, and when I cry and when I laugh, it's still not okay. So, okay, I'm trying really hard, but thank you so much. Thank you so much, guys, for being here, and for sharing your experiences. Laura, Tanya, and Bonnie, thank you so much. Thank you for actually hearing us out, Sandra. Honestly, it helps so much. Even if you don't have any of these conditions, it just helps knowing about them, because you don't know who you may know in your life that may deal with this. So yeah, there you go. You can never tell what someone else is going through. So thank you for being here, everybody. Thanks for spending some time with me. Thanks for honestly being awesome and supporting me. Thank you so much for all of your lovely messages while I've been recovering from this operation. And I hope to see you around, whether it's on our safe space every month or some other point. And if I don't see you around, honestly, please know that I genuinely appreciate and care for you, and I am wishing you the best. Mwah! Love you so much. Have a lovely, lovely Sunday, and I'll see you very soon. Take care, guys. Bye.